Michael Cooper was the kind of guy most people envied. At 35, he was a software engineer at a top Seattle tech company, known for his sharp problem-solving skills and dedication. His friends often joked that he was like a human computer, efficient, reliable, and always in control. But what they didn't know was that Michael's mind was far from the well-oiled machine it appeared to be. Beneath the polished exterior was a man slowly unraveling, and he couldn't quite figure out why. Michael lived in a sleek, modern apartment in downtown Seattle. The space mirrored his personality, minimalist, functional, and meticulously organized. His bookshelves held an impressive array of titles, from coding manuals to self-improvement books, all perfectly arranged by genre and color. His kitchen, though rarely used for cooking, was spotless, with gadgets and appliances that seemed more for show than practicality. The apartment was a symbol of order, but it couldn't mask the chaos brewing in his mind. Michael's day started like clockwork. He'd wake up to the sound of his smart alarm, scroll through emails while brushing his teeth, and spend an inordinate amount of time deciding what to wear. His closet was packed with options: shirts in every shade, multiple pairs of shoes, and accessories that he carefully coordinated. By the time he stepped out the door, he was already mentally drained, and the day hadn't even begun. At work, Michael faced a relentless barrage of decisions. Should he prioritize debugging the app or completing the user interface update? Should he attend a meeting or delegate it to a team member? Each choice felt heavier than the last, and by the afternoon, he often found himself staring blankly at his computer screen, unable to focus. His productivity was declining, and he knew it. Outside of work, things weren't much better. Michael's girlfriend, Emily, had been growing increasingly frustrated. Their conversations often went like this: Emily, what do you want for dinner? Michael, I don't care, you pick. Emily, why do I always have to decide? Can't you just choose for once? What Emily didn't understand was that Michael wasn't being passive. He was simply too exhausted to make another decision. By the end of the day, even something as simple as picking between Thai takeout or pizza felt like an impossible task. The breaking point came one evening when Emily suggested they plan a weekend getaway. What should have been a fun conversation turned into an argument. Emily was excitedly listing potential destinations, but Michael's responses were short and disengaged. Just pick whatever you want, he said, his voice tinged with irritation. That's the problem, Michael, Emily snapped. You're never present. It's like you're always somewhere else. Her words stung because they were true. Michael wasn't present, not for Emily, not for himself, and not even for the goals he once cared about. His dream of mastering a new programming language had been sidelined. The running group he'd joined last year, he hadn't attended in months. That night, lying awake in bed, Michael felt a growing sense of despair. He knew he was stuck, but he didn't know how to get unstuck. All he knew was that he couldn't keep living like this, constantly tired, unmotivated, and disconnected from the people and things that mattered most. The next morning, as he sipped his coffee and scrolled through his phone, an article caught his eye: How Decision Fatigue is Quietly Draining Your Life. Intrigued, Michael clicked on the link. The article described how making too many decisions throughout the day can deplete your mental energy, leading to poor choices, procrastination, and burnout. It was like someone had written a case study on his life. Toward the end of the article, there was a recommendation to seek help from a professional who could help identify and manage the root causes of decision fatigue. That's when Michael remembered a podcast he'd listened to months ago featuring Dr. Vincent Vale, a therapist known for his practical approach to mental wellness. Without overthinking it, something he rarely managed to do, Michael opened his calendar and scheduled a consultation with Dr. Vale. For the first time in months, he felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, there was a way out of the fog that had taken over his life. Michael sat nervously in Dr. Vincent Vale's office, his hands fidgeting with his phone. The room was warm and inviting, with earthy tones, a comfortable couch, and a faint scent of eucalyptus in the air. Despite the calming environment, Michael couldn't shake his anxiety. He wasn't the type to talk about his feelings, let alone admit he needed help. Dr. Vale entered the room with a calm smile, extending his hand. "Michael, it's great to meet you. Please, make yourself comfortable." His voice was steady, almost soothing, and it made Michael feel just a bit less self-conscious. Once they settled, Dr. Vale began with a simple question. "So, what brings you here today?" Michael hesitated. How could he sum up the chaos in his mind? After a moment, he sighed and said, "I'm just tired all the time. It feels like I'm constantly running on empty, but I don't know why. My work, my relationship, it's all starting to fall apart, and I don't know how to fix it." Dr. Vale nodded thoughtfully. "That sounds overwhelming. Let's unpack it together. Can you walk me through a typical day for you?" As Michael described his daily routine, Dr. Vale's expression remained neutral but attentive. He listened as Michael detailed how much energy he spent on seemingly small decisions, from picking out clothes in the morning to managing multiple work tasks without a clear sense of priority. By the time Michael finished, he looked at Dr. Vale and said, "It just feels like I have no bandwidth left by the end of the day." Dr. Vale leaned forward slightly. "Michael, what you're describing is a classic case of decision fatigue. Have you heard of it before?" Michael shook his head. "Not really. What is it?" "Decision fatigue happens when your brain becomes overwhelmed by the sheer number of decisions you have to make in a day," Dr. Vale explained. "Your mental energy is finite, and each choice, big or small, uses up some of that energy. By the time you reach the evening, you're running on fumes, which makes even simple decisions feel impossible." Michael stared at him wide-eyed. "That actually makes a lot of sense, but how do I fix it? I can't just stop making decisions." Over the next few sessions, Michael and Dr. Vale worked to uncover the deeper patterns contributing to his decision fatigue. Dr. Vale asked Michael to track his decisions for a week. By the end of the experiment, Michael was stunned by how many choices he was making daily, most of them trivial. "I had no idea how much energy I was wasting on stuff like what to wear or what to eat," he admitted. Dr. Vale then explored the underlying beliefs driving Michael's behavior. "It seems like you're trying to control everything around you, even the smallest details," he observed. "Where do you think that need for control comes from?" After some reflection, Michael shared a memory from his childhood. His parents, though loving, had been highly critical, often pointing out flaws in his choices. "I guess I learned early on that making the wrong decision wasn't an option," Michael said. "It's like I'm constantly trying to avoid messing up." "That's a powerful realization," Dr. Vale said. "Your brain has been conditioned to associate decisions with high stakes, even when the stakes aren't actually that high. This conditioning is part of what's driving your exhaustion." Dr. Vale introduced Michael to strategies for reducing decision fatigue, starting with simplifying his daily routines. "Let's take some decisions off your plate," he suggested. "For example, what if you created a capsule wardrobe? Just a few versatile outfits you can mix and match without overthinking." Michael was hesitant. "But I like having options," he said. "It's not about eliminating options altogether," Dr. Vale explained. "It's about making certain decisions automatic so you can save your mental energy for what really matters." Reluctantly, Michael agreed to try it. He pared down his closet, keeping only the items he wore most often. To his surprise, mornings became less stressful, and he started his day with more energy. Next, Dr. Vale encouraged Michael to establish clear priorities at work. Instead of trying to tackle everything at once, focus on the top 3 tasks that will have the most impact, he advised. Michael resisted at first, worrying that he'd fall behind. But as he implemented the strategy, he found that he was actually accomplishing more with less effort. One of the most challenging exercises was planning his meals for the week. "I'm not much of a planner," Michael admitted. "What if I change my mind about what I want to eat?" "That's okay," Dr. Vale said. "The goal isn't to lock yourself into rigid plans. It's to reduce the number of decisions you're making in the moment. Having a plan gives you flexibility, not restriction. Despite his initial resistance, Michael found that meal planning saved him both time and energy. By reducing the number of choices he faced throughout the day, he started to feel a subtle but significant shift in his mental clarity. As Michael continued to apply these strategies, he began to notice patterns in his behavior. "It's like my brain is finally starting to breathe," he told Dr. Vale during one session. "I never realized how much I was suffocating myself with unnecessary decisions." Dr. Vale nodded. "That's the power of awareness. By recognizing where your energy is going, you can start to take back control, and not in a way that drains you, but in a way that empowers you." Several months into his sessions with Dr. Vale, Michael had started to see improvements. His mornings were smoother, his workdays more focused, and his evenings less chaotic. But it wasn't until he faced a high-stakes challenge at work that his progress was truly put to the test. One Monday morning, Michael's boss, Jason, called him into his office. "Michael, I've got an urgent project for you," Jason said, sliding a folder across the desk. "We're pitching a new app concept to our biggest client next week. I need you to take the lead on this." Michael's stomach tightened. Leading a project like this meant coordinating with multiple departments, presenting to senior executives, and managing a tight deadline, all while delivering something innovative and flawless. In the past, a task like this would have sent him into a tailspin of overthinking and anxiety. Jason must have sensed his hesitation. "You've got this, Michael. Your work has been solid lately, and I trust you to pull this off." Michael nodded, but inside his thoughts were racing. What if I miss something important? What if I don't have enough time to make it perfect? What if I fail? That evening, Michael brought his concerns to his session with Dr. Vale. "This project could make or break my reputation at work," he said, his voice tense. "I'm terrified I'll mess it up." Dr. Vale listened carefully before responding. "Michael, let's break this down. What's your biggest fear about this project?" "That I'll miss a crucial detail, and it'll reflect badly on me," Michael admitted. "And what's the likelihood of that happening if you approach this project with the tools you've been practicing?" Dr. Vale asked. Michael paused, thinking about the strategies he'd implemented, simplifying tasks, prioritizing high-impact decisions, and trusting his team. "I guess the likelihood is lower than I'm making it out to be." "Exactly," Dr. Vale said. "Your perfectionism is trying to convince you that every detail carries the same weight. But the reality is, not every decision is equally important. Let's focus on identifying the key decisions that will move this project forward." Together, they created a plan. Michael would start by breaking the project into manageable phases and delegating specific tasks to his team. He would prioritize the big-picture elements of the pitch, such as the app's core features and its value proposition, rather than getting bogged down in minor details. Finally, he would schedule time each day to review progress, ensuring that he stayed on track without overworking himself. As the week progressed, Michael put the plan into action. He began each day by reviewing his priorities and delegating tasks, which freed up his mental energy for creative problem-solving. Instead of micromanaging his team, he trusted them to handle their responsibilities, checking in only when necessary. By midweek, however, a snag arose. One of his team members misunderstood a key component of the project, and Michael didn't catch the error until it was nearly too late. For a moment, his old patterns kicked in. His heart raced, and his mind filled with self-blame. "If only I'd handled this myself, this wouldn't have happened." But then he remembered something Dr. Vale had said. "Mistakes are opportunities for growth, not evidence of failure." Taking a deep breath, Michael addressed the issue calmly, working with his team to find a solution. To his surprise, they resolved the problem quickly, and the project continued to move forward. On the day of the presentation, Michael stood in front of the boardroom facing a dozen executives from the client company. His slides were ready, his pitch rehearsed, but his palms still felt clammy. The old voice of doubt whispered in his mind, "What if I forget something? What if they ask a question I can't answer?" Before he began, Michael repeated a mantra he'd adopted during therapy. I am prepared. I am capable. I am enough. As he launched into the presentation, something remarkable happened. Instead of striving for perfection, Michael focused on connection, sharing the app's concept with enthusiasm and authenticity. When an executive asked a challenging question, Michael didn't panic. He paused, thought carefully, and responded with confidence, even admitting when he didn't have all the answers. "That's a great point," he said. "Let me follow up with more details after the meeting." When the presentation ended, the room erupted in applause. Jason clapped him on the shoulder, beaming. "You nailed it, Michael. The client loved it." Later that day, as Michael reflected on the experience, he realized how far he had come. In the past, the pressure of a project like this would have left him paralyzed, obsessing over every tiny detail and burning himself out. But this time, he had faced his fear, trusted his team, and focused on what truly mattered. The success of the presentation wasn't just about impressing the client. It was a testament to his growth. For the first time in years, Michael felt a sense of pride that wasn't tied to perfection. He had shown up, done his best, and let go of the need to control everything. In his next session with Dr. Vale, Michael shared his breakthrough. "I used to think every decision was life or death," he said, "but now I see that it's about focusing on what really matters and letting the rest go." Dr. Vale smiled. "That's the essence of overcoming decision fatigue, Michael. It's not about making fewer decisions, it's about making the right ones."